I can keep just watching this stuff all day. I want to just talk about this stuff all day.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Visual Effects Artists React. We are here on the couch with a very special guest, Joe Letteri from WETA FX.
Joe is responsible for, I'm sure, a lot of your favorite movies.
My official title is Senior Visual Effects Supervisor, but yeah, I've been doing it for a little over 30 years now.
I think it's safe to say you're a legendary level visual effects artist. It's an honor to have you on the couch with us.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it.
So then there's a shot in Avatar 3. To us, this is our strap shot of the third movie. So there was one shot that blew us away. I mean, not one shot. There's a lot of shots that blew us away in the theater. But there's one in particular that really stood out.
There was a shot in the second movie. Here he's just kind of floating in the water, and there's a shot of like the caustics from the water hitting the sand, and it was like, oh, that's a really advanced shot. And then I learned it was actually just a real shot. It was a real plate in the second movie. So then this time around, I see this shot, and I'm like, oh, I bet that's a real shot. Look how good that looks. And then the camera just holds on it for a while, and then tilts up to reveal it was all CG. I was like,
it's like, what is going on in this shot? How are you guys building this shot?
You just build it, really.
Yeah.
To create the flow of the river, we had to craft every single rocks on the river. Additionally, we had to simulate the entire forest and all of the dust and water spray being kicked in the air. The simulation was so big that it reached 1 petabyte of data, which is a record for WETA.
At this point, like, we have all the pieces that we need, and now it's just putting them together and making them work.
So it's really just a demonstration of how good your tools have gotten, where now an artist can just build the rocks, set up the water sim, hit go. All your tools do their job.
It'll be multiple artists, but yeah, the idea is that the tools are kind of doing what they need to. That was one of the things that we really enjoyed on film 3, because we spent so much time on 2 building this new pipeline and this new toolkit that we could roll right into 3 with like no gap.
You are learning to breathe.
And just start spending time on the creative.
yeah, this shot felt to me, it's just like, this is just you guys flexing. You're like, all right, we know how to do this really well, so let's just show you what we can do really well. Look at this, keep looking at it.
There are a ton of technical achievements in Avatar 3. One that I found most impressive was Spider. There are so many human beings in these fully CG worlds interacting with fully CG characters. And like, you guys make them match from a lighting point of view, from a cinematography point of view. How did you do that? I know it's a big question, but how did you do that?
How you do that?
How did you do that?
Well, I think one of the keys is you have to have a digital double for the character. For example, to get Spider's integration working, you have to put him in the plate, put the model in the plate, light it, really make sure that everything is working so that everything he touches or is surrounded by will integrate. And again, even if you're not using any of that at all, that's fine. It tells you that you're in the ballpark. Or there might be times when you do have to replace it. Like a lot of shots in the water, we're replacing the bits that contact the water. Like we might be splitting off his arms and putting CG arms in there, or CG legs, or, you know, wherever it needs to be done, you always try to find what your split points are. It's kind of like solving the facial. You have to know what you've got and that's all correct before anything else will work.
Are there shots in the film where we are just straight up looking at the CG double, treated as if it's the real actor, and it just goes right through and we don't notice?
And not just the actor, but like a close-up on their face.
There's actually a couple, like the whole last scene is that. There's one in the battle, like in the grotto, and he's kind of looking up at the battle. That's CG. The whole last shot where he goes into the spirit world, or the whole last sequence, he's fully CG in that.
Amazing.
And that whole scene there?
The last scene, yeah.
Do you feel like making a perfect digital replica of a person is a solved problem, assuming you're working with WETA?
Well, it can be. I mean, you know, one of the things about doing human doubles is, again, you usually get really good reference. You know, we had a lot of live action of him that was shots, and we knew what to do with it. And I think not just WETA, but I think a lot of people in the industry have gotten like really familiar with that. And, you know, just depending on the nature of the work, you kind of crack into it in different ways. Our approach is to do a full 3D double. At least for this film, we weren't using any kind of deep fake additions to it or anything. We experimented a little bit with that just to see if it would help us, you know, solve the lighting or solve the integration. It gave us some clues, but not really usable for what we needed. And since we had built the full double anyway, we just pushed into that. So that uses like the same facial solver as all the other characters do. so that helps. We've had to do so many sims of his hair anyway, even for film 2, there are a lot of times where we just had to replace his hair or replace parts of his hair for the integration. So we already had a good handle on, you know, what to do with his hairstyle. So we just really kept going with it wherever we needed it.
What's up, everybody? Christian here. Now, before Joe gets too far into the awesomeness, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind lately, and that is health stuff. I'm 34 years old, and it happens a lot at this age. You notice something small, or you hit a new phase in life, and suddenly you're lying in bed way too late, Googling symptoms, convincing yourself that it's something more dramatic and more serious than it actually is. It's usually not that we don't want to see a doctor. It's everything around it that makes us want to delay or put this off. Calling an office, finding an open appointment, being on hold, not knowing if they're in your network or not, or worrying that you won't feel heard once you finally do get in the office. And that's why today's sponsor, Zocdoc, is here to help. Zocdoc is a free website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors all in one place. We're talking over 150,000 providers across all 50 United States, covering 200 plus specialties. Everything from just primary care to dermatology, all the way down to dental and eye care. What I really like is that you can search based on what you care about. You can look at verified patient reviews, see who feels like the right fit, and choose a doctor based on your own preferences. You can book in-person visits or video calls, see real-time availability, and book instantly. No phone calls, no waiting around. Appointments booked through Zocdoc typically happen within 24 to 72 hours, but sometimes can even happen that same day. So instead of doom scrolling at the end of the night at 11 p.m., you can actually book a real appointment before your head even hits that pillow. So it's 2026, and I'm urging you to be kind to yourself this year. Using Zocdoc is completely free. Just visit Zocdoc.com/quartercrew or click the link in the description below to find and instantly book an appointment with a top-rated in-network doctor today. Now let's get back to React.
Go.
So when Spider's learning how to ride the elu here, obviously the elu is not real, so you have to create a CG elu, but that's under the water.
Yeah.
But it looks like the surface of the water around him is still being maintained. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
so like kind of like the whole creek sequence when they're going down the river and the rapids and whatnot. What I'm actually kind of being blown away by here is how much of the real plate photography seems to be kept.
So let me backtrack a little bit. One of the things that we did on film 2 that we were getting everything set up to shoot was we wanted to solve the idea that we were talking about on the Hobbit shoot, which is how do you integrate what you're seeing in the plate while you're shooting with the CG aspect. We know that we needed depth compositing per pixel, but we needed it to be live. So we built a live depth comp system, and the way we did that is we shot and scanned like all of the sets. We'd shoot like actors in all the costumes and made Maya versions of them that we just ran through Gazebo, and we just trained a network to do depth compositing.
So that shot there, where we're seeing all the overlay and whatnot, is that essentially a screen recording of what you guys were seeing on the display?
Yes.
On set?
Wow.
Exactly, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, you know, and you could see it's only 1K, it's real time, so it's, you know, it's got, you know, flickering and edges and everything, but it allowed Jim to compose and shoot while we're shooting live, you know.
That's that informed intent. When you're all on the same page about what's actually happening, you can all make the most informed decisions.
Exactly.
And so like what we're seeing here and why this is crazy is that like we're seeing CG elements behind the actual live action person that's being filmed, but we're seeing that in real time.
Yeah, no one's sitting there rotoing the person and putting the stuff behind them.
And it's all tracked in 3D space in real time.
Exactly, and you're seeing live people behind the CG people. It's all you know, pixel to pixel.
And of course, people in real life aren't 9 feet tall. So when you have a person trying to interact with a Na'vi in a situation like this, there was this cable cam system developed that actually had TV screens on. Like if you ever watch like a football game or something like that and you see the cameras flying around and attached to multiple cables, that allows the camera to get to very specific 3D positions anywhere in that stadium. And this is a similar thing, but for the head motion of a Na'vi, and you just put that head on that screen. Right?
Exactly, we did, because we were doing so much virtual work here. Every stage had a capture volume around it. So yeah, we were tracking the camera live in the capture volume, and then that also allowed us to put the characters where they needed to be using that camera.
Whoa, 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 easy, Tiger, easy.
Yeah, and so here's then we just adapted that technique for you know, offline so that we could get better 3D reconstruction, and that helped us with, things like that shot there where, contact, because in that shot, we had to replace most of Spider, again, because of the contact, but we knew where everything needed to be because of that, so.
Because it now exists in 3D space. You're not having to guess the orientation of that arm based on a 2D projection.
Exactly, so even as we're animating, like, the parts of his body that we want to replace, we're lining them up to that per frame mesh.
Wow.
And because that is a native stereo shot and comp, we had to know pixel depth. So
yeah, again, no cheating here. You can't.
Are you using the stereo camera feed to create your depth, or
yes.
is that okay?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we do it both ways. Live, it's the stereo camera feed. We have just two small Baslers on top of the camera. They add a little bit of weight, but I know Jim was happy to take them on board because they gave us the live depth compositing.
Gotcha.
And here you see an example of that, and that's mostly how it's done. But because we had mocap cameras all around, we could also just hang some reference cameras around the set as well, so we could reconstruct from multiple viewpoints.
Could you explain how you're able to create a 3D image from two cameras?
You're doing trigonometry, so if you have two cameras, you have a baseline, and each camera is going to see something different. From that, you can draw a ray, like, from each camera to the point on the object you're looking at. You find the same point in each camera, and you'll find it's a little bit different. And from there, you can build the triangle and use that to calculate the depth from each one. And so even as it moves, you'll see, like, every point on there. You can see some of the jagged points that keep getting, like, pushed off.
Yeah.
That's a ray from a camera trying to figure out where that pixel is, but it doesn't have, like, enough information from both cameras, so it gets really dirty. But you see, they always shoot off in the direction of the ray from the camera.
But areas where there is detail are locked in.
It locks in, exactly, yeah.
Super cool. And because you guys have your own system with two little cameras, you can put that on any camera system that someone's filming a movie with.
Exactly right, yeah.
Very cool.
So we use that a lot these days because it helps even just basic compositing to know where that is.
Oh, also, all the people, like, with their phones out taking videos of all the stuff happening. It's like each one of those cameras has a different viewpoint that has to be rendered out and comped in behind all these real people in the shot.
Yep.
And
so that was actually
complex.
done by using, essentially a light field, like just rendering the whole thing out and then just re-rendering just the light field from each camera position. So we didn't do a full render from each one because that was enough detail to do that.
That's another thing somebody at the premiere had been saying. It's like, oh, that shot, we thought it was gonna be easy. And then we had to make 80 unique phone assets.
Yeah. Yeah. Things that don't show up in the script, and when you shoot it, it's like, oh yeah.
Oh man. So when the trailer for Avatar 2 came out, there was a shot, a mundane shot, if you will, of Jake Sully wrapping his hand in a strap. And we were like, that looks so real. How are they doing that?
This is the wettest water I've ever seen.
It turns out it's not only did they actually film something for real, it's also just hyper skilled VFX artists also working on it, all putting it together. And I remember Eric saying, like, James just wanted a specific action and he just wanted to film it and be done with it rather than having to go back and forth like 20 rounds of notes and all that kind of stuff. And that totally made sense. So then there's a shot in Avatar 3.
Air breather. First, I must see your soul.
Which is a shot of Wren scooping some powder off her hand, which, once again, a mundane shot. But to do this kind of a physics sim, to us, this is our strap shot of the third movie. Like, what did you guys do here? How did you do this? What are we looking at?
how you do that?
How do you do that? It looks like you guys filmed the real plate. You actually did the same thing with, like, the strap shot where you did it for real.
We recreated that hand. I'm sure Jim would have wanted to keep as much as possible, but oftentimes it's easier to just replace it.
So this was the shot that Niko and I saw when we were previewing some stuff when we visited Lightstorm last month. There's a shot in the last scene there where it looked like a photographic plate of her hand with the dust on it.
Ah!
Yeah.
How long
did
did
that take? We bet that it was going to take under 5 minutes. Right, Jamie, right?
And so we called it out, and it's like, well, first off, she only has 3 fingers in the final thing, so.
Yeah. That's why I worked for Jay, because he had 4 fingers. Yeah.
Sometimes when we've got really specific interaction of things, we'll do an insert and then we'll make a decision later whether we want to completely replace it with CG or whether we want to use photographic elements of that. So you can see that we had somebody in makeup, in hand makeup, to match Varang, but obviously they've got an extra finger. So we had to decide, are we gonna replace the hand? We wound up keeping part of the palm and the rest was CG.
Yeah.
And the blowpipe was real and the powder was real.
Yeah, because that looked like the same just in that quick moment I had.
So we really believe in reference. There's a certain point where the reference has to be so specific, you might as well try to treat it like a photographic plate. Whether you use it or not is determined by what takes the most energy. To exactly do a sim on the powder, exactly do the blowpipe, exactly do the interaction of the blowpipe and the palm of the hand and the light and everything else. So it really just boils down to kind of what's easiest. You're going to shoot the reference anyway. In that particular case, I made a call ahead of time. I think it should be a plate. Would we have done it 100% CG? Absolutely. We can do anything. I mean, it's kind of amazing right now. It's a question of how much is it going to cost? How many iterations am I going to have to sit through? And so I'll make a decision based on what is going to come back to bite me on the ass most in post-production.
I find this shot so fascinating because of the fact it starts as real plate photography. You kind of bypass a lot of that sort of iteration of trying to figure out what's the camera move here, what's the animation, what's the movement of getting the action right. And so it's all just a great blueprint for what ends up being there.
It's great to have as much real reference as possible, both for figuring out what we need to recreate for visual effects, but also Jim, in this case, tells us exactly what he wants. He just shoots the shot, and then we know what we have to do to make it work. And look, you learn from this. By trying to match this, you learn about the wrinkles in the palm and how the lighting is working, and that just feeds into it. So each shot you do, you get a little bit better at it, and you wind up being able to rely on what you can create more and more. Now this gets back to your question about the water, and that's why I took us through all this, because one of the things we did on film too, because we had this tank here, is we just said, well, since we have all this depth information, let's just see if we can track the water. And we actually, and we actually got surprisingly good results from it without even training for the water.
Yeah,
because it was trained on everything else, it just gave us a pretty decent track on the water, because that meant that we could then solve it. Because when you're doing water solves, you're doing an FFT essentially, right? That's how
fast Fourier transform.
Fast Fourier transform, exactly. You're breaking the water down into all of its frequency components.
Yeah.
And so if you have a track, you can try to resolve for the primary frequency components that allow you to reconstruct the water to match to the plate.
Now, what would be the primary reason for trying to do that?
So that you can have a blend between the live action element and the CG element.
The idea being that the CG water is more or less matching the real plate photography water, right?
Exactly. It's very similar to like if you were shooting like in a room and you needed to extend a floor, you would build a little bit of the floor and you would overlap it and lock it as the camera moves. It's the exact same thing here, except your floor is changing shape every frame.
And so then the shot of like Spider riding the elu in the water there, he's actually in the water making real waves around him, but you also need to have those real waves interact with the CG character making their own real waves.
Exactly, yeah.
But those are two things that traditionally have never been able to like merge. You're always just like, all right, we get a nice little crossfade here, and now the CG water matches in with the real water.
A little bit of mask feather and call it a day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, because it's all in native 3D, it has to match. Like even crossfades have to be pretty spot on.
It feels like that native 3D really forced you guys to like top to bottom recreate and simulate this world.
Exactly right.
As opposed to just doing tricks of like putting things on top of each other. Man,
and then the other thing that we did for the water is we developed a way to refract the comp through the water, because a lot of the shots were.
Sorry, what do you mean?
Say that one more time.
Well, a lot of the shots were done on the stage in the template, right? Like Jim would shoot something on the template, and he would also be composing for the part of the animal you see under the water. And there's no refraction when you're doing it on the stage. We don't have any kind of real time. But when you actually put the index of refraction in, your composition would totally change. Like now the creature's head would be in the wrong place and the composition would break. So what we do is, because we have all that per frame depth, we added essentially per frame index of refraction. So as we're looking through the water, we can bend the index of refraction, per pixel to kind of, cheat the creature back to where it is. So we can basically dial how dense the water is.
Now, wouldn't that be technically inaccurate to how the physics work?
Yes. It's one of those points where you start with knowing what the physics is, but then you have to cheat it a little bit to get what the shot demands. But what that also meant then is all of our color correction that was happening under the water now had to be refracted. So we developed in the comp a way to essentially do color correction through the refracted pixels.
Wow.
This is all being done with Loki, right? This is
yes, for the simulation.
Yeah, and Loki is your overall like simulation tool that you guys developed.
Yes.
And it does more than just water. It does anything that's fluid. It's like a fluid mechanic thing. So smoke, fire, water.
Yeah, for a long time, like a lot of the stuff we looked at on the show suffered from the issue of having different physics systems living in different worlds. You wouldn't be able to have like a fire putting smoke that's going up through a waterfall and having the two interact.
Yeah.
But you guys have fixed that with Loki, where it's all just one big physics sim.
Right.
When did you guys first start developing Loki as a tool?
I'm trying to think exactly when that was. That was after Avatar 1. We came up with, a way to get the water done for that. But I wanted to look at, is there some way to break down simulations into their component parts, right? I'm always looking for what's the lowest level you can get to that something is still going to work. And so we developed Loki with the idea of trying to find essentially one system that would do everything.
One
Simulation tool.
to rule them all.
And we looked at different ways to represent that. And in the end, we realized it just had to be forces. We had to be able to transfer forces. So we wrote a system that would allow us to transfer and couple forces between any simulation. So whether it was water or fire or muscles or creatures, we could solve it all in one setup. And then the solver keeps track of the states of all the different things you're trying to solve and hands off forces from one to the other. And by the way, we have the ability to do it both ways. Like if one force is obviously overwhelming and that you're not going to see the coupling, why spend the time? Just do it the way you said. But for a lot of these shots, the coupling was important. And so coupling means that when you run a simulation on something, it will work both ways. So for example, the water hits the brick wall. Well, if the brick wall now collapses back and affects the water, that's coupled. That means these things are kind of working together.
Yeah.
And you can't do one first and do the other first. They're interrelated. So you have to interleave the solve, not even every frame, but dozens of times, if not hundreds of times per frame to get the interaction correct. We could keep everything working together.
Wow.
So that was the impetus behind Loki, is to just build one big engine that could handle any sim or any mix of sims that you need.
Right. And it's also doing like the bubbles and stuff too. Like.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's not a post-process simulation.
No, the bubbles are part of the main solve because they kind of have to be to get the interaction, correct. And bubbles were something that we really spent a lot more time on 3 than 2. On 2, we came up with a way to do it, but they turn out to be harder than they look, because bubbles are just that, and foam is lots of tiny, little bubbles, but they move a lot, they blend, they merge, they compact with each other,
collapse.
But they collapse, and the collapse is really the hard part because what's happening is you've got a bubble moving up through the water, and it's restricted by the water itself, right? But as soon as it hits the air, there's no restriction, so it essentially goes supersonic, which is why it pops. But that's solvers can't do that really because it's a big jump. So we spent a lot of time trying to come up with algorithms that would detect when you're near the surface and resolve the proper time steps and all that. And actually a lot of that blended in with what we were doing with the fire, because you have similar things happening at the edge of the fire. So it's nice to have a unified solver where we can test out these ideas and see where they might work.
So to build something like that, do you basically just go out and find the best mathematicians and physicists that you can find? And
it's just part of our ongoing process. I mean, we already have a lot of the people that know how to do this.
There's no one to find because we have them all.
Looking at this, there's different colors here.
Yeah.
Do those represent different levels of detail?
No. This is really getting into the weeds, but this is basically showing how we can split the solver across multiple machines.
Oh, so it's each different, basically, computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So we set up the solve, but then they have to get run across multiple machines. And of course, the trick there, like Loki in general, you have to transfer the forces from one solver to another, which means one machine to another. So the fact that Loki was written with this kind of multi-solver in mind allows us to do this.
So like just
We have so many
further
questions.
Yeah.
So the ship cruising along the water, and we see the one color, and that transfers into the second color, but the motion of that water remains consistent. It's not that these two computers are just working in parallel at the same time. It's that one computer is figuring out exactly which forces and velocities and whatnot are going into the next voxel next to it, and then that computer is taking that input data and then basically simulating it from there, and it perfectly matches.
And it goes both ways. Yeah, because it has to go both ways.
Yeah.
To
So
get
all
the
computers
software.
are in parallel talking to each other at all. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, exactly. The beginning of that clip there before it transfers to this one, but that shows you the state machine, which is the transition between the different states of the water, you know, because
there?
Yeah, because you could see the water, you know, you have like what we would call bulk water, which is where it still looks like water. Then it starts to break up into blobbies, and then it breaks up into foam, and it breaks up into spray. And of course, that's all dependent on how near or far you are. So Loki manages all of that because those all have to go into different solvers, you know, because like the spray is going to really need to be coupled with the air drag, whereas the bulk water, you know, can approximate that more coarsely.
So for something like that, you basically have your solid liquid water sim that's turning into a splash, which is kind of like your particles, and those turn into tiny little bits of mist, which is basically like an air gas kind of simulation.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you have your foam and your bubbles on top of that. And then, of course, the rigid bodies of the ship as well being interacted with the water.
Exactly, and that's the nice thing about Loki is it manages all that for us.
That does sound really nice.
Yeah. You do something for 15 years, you write new software.
I can keep just watching this stuff all day. I want to just talk about this stuff all day. It seems like the biggest leap from Avatar 2 to 3 was similar to the leap from Lord of the Rings 2 to 3, and that is just like everyone's on the same page, they're locked in, and so suddenly just the pace of getting shots done were quicker. And people were able to like get to a final shot faster. I think he called them like one and dones.
Yeah,
where it's like
first look finals, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it's like, all right, here's V1.
Yeah.
Put it in the movie.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We had a lot more of those on this film than anything else we've ever done.
You know, if you have good artists and everybody's like on the same page, it's like...
You know, because I still think with visual effects, to me it reminds me of like what must have been like 100, 20 years or so ago. When like if you wanted to make a movie, first you have to build a camera. Like, it's like we're still kind of in that phase. Like we're coming out of it now. Like everyone kind of knows what the design should be and settling on things that that kind of work. But there's still enough to experiment with that it's still interesting.
First, you got to build the camera.
What aspects of science and math do you think are important for an artist to learn, especially like a filmmaker and visual effects artist?
Well, obviously depends on which part of it you want to get into, but light interaction for sure. Gravity is just a good thing to know about. Whether you're going to do simulations or whether you're going to do animation, you have to understand gravity and balance. And actually, if you're doing lighting, you need to understand that as well. So some basic understanding of those things is useful. I also think that filmmaking itself is useful. Like people need to specialize because there's so much that has to be done. You really have to understand your part of it really well, but you also need to understand what everyone else around you is doing. You have to be able to figure out what those handoffs are and how to make each piece work for everyone else. That was actually one of the great things about working on Avatar 3, because we had already done so much on getting the technology working. Our time with Jim was spent more just looking at the creative, and that gave Jim time to really talk more with us about like what are the shots supposed to be, like look at why this one is in the film, here's the story that it's trying to tell, here's what the pieces are trying to tell. So it was like a master class in filmmaking, but it was really useful to understand how all the pieces are meant to fit together. You don't really want to lose track of the fact that we're making a movie, because that's the fun part.
Yeah.
I like to think it all starts like this.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We have another episode with Joe where we talk about the story of technology and visual effects, because you've been there since the start.
Well, at least my perspective on what I've seen.
Definitely subscribe for the next episode coming out, because, I mean, this guy, he did Jurassic Park. We're going to look at Jurassic Park. It's great. It's going to be good.